Hey people of the future, thanks for stopping by, and I'm happy to hear that you survived the corona. So I've had a HP laptop for over 5 years and it's been my first and only device. Each time I turn the laptop, I need to wait 10 minutes for it to boot up, just to be greeted with a notification from HP telling me that my laptop has reached its full lifespan and that it might die on me. And because I stopped going to uni, I decided that investing in a PC would be the right option. Because big brains don't spend money, they invest money. I'll admit, like most noobs, it was quite intimidating stepping into PC building for the first time. But once I stopped whining and took the initiative to start learning the basic components of a PC, it slowly got easier. Because at the end of the day, you'd rather have an understanding of what you're spending your money on. Plus, we're blessed with how much free PC content there is out there. So it took me a total of 2 weeks from day one learning my first things about PCs to getting my parts and lastly assembling the PC together. During this time, pickups weren't available and delivery was the only option, and prices were also bumped up a little, but I still managed to get my PC for around 1,000 Australian dollars. For my case, I went with the Thermaltake Versa H15 with its included light power 450 watt PSU. I was actually planning on getting an even cheaper case with included PSU, a generic brand for $65, but then I searched and found out that you shouldn't cheap out on a PSU because it can explode and catch on fire, so I kept it with this. While it did seem weird to pet a metal box to keep yourself grounded to avoid zapping and killing your components, I did it anyways for a first time safe practice. I remember being so lost when I firstly started to research for a motherboard on a PC part picker, because it kept telling me that the only compatible motherboards were the more expensive ones like the X570, and I was like, surely I didn't need to spend that much for a motherboard. So when I found out that you can get older motherboards with the Gen 3 Ryzen Radeon sticker, that was a big game changer for me because that saved me a lot of money there. So yeah, so that's why I went with this B450MH motherboard because it was the cheapest Gen 3 motherboard on Satacom, so that's why I went with that. There's only 2 RAM slots, but I thought that was plenty for me because I wasn't planning on upgrading anytime soon. So I decided to get 3200 DDR RAM because that was recommended on the Ryzen site, so I just went with this. I got this on MSI. I chose this one 16 gigs to 8 gig sticks. I chose this one because it was the cheapest. Taking this out was quite weird. It was like popping out a tablet. I thought it would just fall out, but guess not. Plus it said on the box that it was designed for Ryzen, so I was like, that's a plus. It was the cheapest and it said that, so that's a plus for me. Here I was just making sure that I was going to put it the right way because I didn't want to wreck anything. I didn't realize that I needed a decent amount of force to pop in the RAM, as I think I was too scared to break anything, but then I eventually put it in fine, making sure that it clicked. So here I have the 500 gig SSD WD Blue, again because it was the cheapest option, and I heard that you need an SSD to put your operation system on, like to put your programs on so they run faster. And here was when I was really confused because every video I watched they had the little screw in part to screw in the SSD, but mine didn't come with it, so I was kind of confused. But then I realized that instead of having the little screw, my one came with this little plastic knobby thing. I spent a while trying to take that out. I then realized that the plastic little knob thing was already in the right spot, so I put it back in. Then I put in the SSD. Yeah, this part was quite simple, it wasn't too hard. It's just that every video I watched that had the little screws, so it confused me a little bit, but it wasn't too bad. Now it's time for the CPU. I also learned it's called a processor. So I went with the Ryzen 3600. It was an easy option because it was recommended everywhere for the best bang for your buck budget CPU. This CPU was the base of my research to build my PC on. So here I'm opening the CPU. I started touching it, then I remembered that you should only touch the sides of the CPU, not the pins or the front. So I flipped it around. And when I firstly grabbed the CPU, it felt so nice, it had weight to it. For some reason when I watched all the online videos, I thought it was really light, but it makes sense that it has weight to it. So it feels nice, it feels solid. Putting down the CPU was quite easy. I think it was too easy that I kept checking that it wasn't wobbly, because it just slid in too easily. So I locked down the handle and made sure it was flush. Yeah, then I had to get rid of these plastic bracket things. So I'm just using the stock cooler that came with the CPU, making sure that there's thermal paste on the back. Screwing down the fan wasn't too hard, as I remembered to screw diagonally, making sure to screw down little by little on each side so we get an even pressure. I did struggle a little bit at the start because the outer plastic of the fan seemed to get in the way of the screwdriver, but it wasn't too bad. So here I was just putting on the copper thingy to lift up the motherboard from the case. I forgot what it was called. Just measuring out, making sure I put them in the right spot. Also putting in the IO shield. I'm pretty sure it wouldn't really matter if I put the IO shield in or not, because it looks pretty plain and ugly anyways. Making sure I put in the right orientation. I remember putting in the IO shield was quite awkward, quite a weird process. Just gotta work your way around the edges just till it clicks. So then it was time to lay down the motherboard and screw everything in. So now it's time to install the GPU, which I also learned is called a video card. I went with the RX 570 because it was just the cheapest one in Centacom. Well, it wasn't the cheapest, there was some that were like under $100, and I thought maybe those were too cheap, so I just went the next cheapest one, which was this, the RX 570. The GPU was definitely the hardest part to pick for me, as there were so many options and I didn't really know which one to choose and the difference between them all. So that's why I just went with this cheap one, as I can always upgrade in the future, and I read that you don't want to bottleneck your GPU, so my GPU is trash. I should still be fine as long as it's running at 100%. Plus I'm only using a 1080p monitor. But you have any recommendations for what GPU I can get in the future? Feel free to leave a comment. Clicking in the GPU was really satisfying to do, but then afterwards putting in the screws to keep it straight on the case took me like 40 minutes. I was struggling. I had no idea how to put the screws in. It just seemed to not fit. Then I realized I had to lift up the GPU a little bit to get the screws to fit in, but that took me like a whole 40 minutes to try and figure that out. Going into this PC build, I wasn't too worried about how to slap on the components on my motherboard because I was quite prepared from how much videos of PC builds I watched on YouTube. But the part that I was always dreadful of and I was scared of starting was the cable management and plugging in the cables. Because just looking at the front panel connectors and all the little cables, that was really overwhelming. And I always wondered why PC build videos wouldn't show the cable part, the part where they plug in all the cables. And when I set up my shot to record myself putting in the cables, coincidentally my phone camera battery died. So I'll just replace it with some epic GTA footage. After installing the WD Blue 1TB hard drive, it was time to put in the cables. As I predicted, the front panel connectors were a pain to plug in. Then it was time to plug in the power for the GPU and the CPU. But this took me a long time because both the CPU and GPU had 8-pin connectors, and I had no idea which one went in which. It also didn't help that my motherboard had 0 instructions. I did freak out a little bit when I found that my fan pins were one less than the pins on the motherboard. The cables were probably my least favorite part of the build, but now I realize why people don't film the cable management part, because your face sticks right up into the case plugging in the small cables, and it's a long and tedious process which probably isn't very entertaining. Lastly, it was time to install the drivers. This part was normally skipped over in most build videos, so I was worried about how hard it would be, but it was actually pretty straightforward and easy. The Windows operation system started automatically, and downloading the drivers is simply just going on the website and picking out the latest drivers.
I'm going home. I can't stop jacking, dude. I jack it in traffic.